Come on in. Good morning. Thanks for coming. Last month, during the State of the State message, I made a promise to a mother from Newark that we would help to reduce the cycle of violence so prevalent in many of our urban communities. Today, I'm proud to stand here with the Attorney General, the number of county prosecutors from across the state to propose changes in our bail process with a constitutional amendment that modifies the right to bail in New Jersey, one that works to enhance overall public safety while securing the integrity of our criminal justice system. The change, which parallels the federal system, aims to provide our courts with the ability to keep dangerous offenders in jail and off community streets rather than giving them an opportunity to commit further acts of violence, intimidate witnesses until the time of their trial. A 2007 study by the Bureau of Justice Statistics found that of pretrial releases, about a third of released defendants were charged with one or more types of pretrial misconduct. Nearly a quarter had a bench warrant issued for failing to appear in court, and about a sixth were arrested for a new offense. More than half of those new arrests were for felonies. Making changes to our bail laws is a common sense move to stop preventable crimes from occurring by allowing a judge to use his or her common sense approach to deciding whether someone deserves to be released or not. Their history of crime and the potential danger to individuals, both witnesses and innocent citizens on the streets, should be one of those factors that a judge should be able to consider. This revision establishes an exception authorizing pretrial detention when a court finds that no amount of bail, pretrial release conditions, or combination of bail and conditions would assure the defendant's appearance, protect the safety of any person and of the community, or maintain the integrity of the criminal justice process. This long overdue common sense measure can only improve the quality of life in our communities by keeping the most violent criminals off the streets and ease the minds of folks around the state against those who have been charged with violent crimes. And so the group of folks I have up here are prosecutors that I've worked with over the course of my career, both as a U.S. attorney and now since I've been governor. They're experienced prosecutors on both the state and federal level, and people who I count on, along with the Attorney General, for advice and counsel on these type of issues, and ask them to be with me here today to show that what we're attempting to do here is something that's going to be good for our state and good for the law enforcement community. So I'm going to introduce the Attorney General for some remarks, and then we'll come back to take questions. General?
Governor. Thank you. Good morning, and thank you, Governor. Thanks to the prosecutors who join us here today. The Governor's got this right. This is a common sense solution to what many people may think is already going on, because it does happen in the federal courts. If you're the victim of a crime, you shouldn't have to worry about whether or not a person's given bail without consideration to whether or not they pose a danger to you or to your community. Witnesses in these cases shouldn't have to worry about it either. If a person's bailed, the people that are affected by it, the victim, the victim's family, their communities, the places where these crimes occur, should have the peace of mind to know that the judge has considered whether or not they pose a danger to that community. We thank the Governor for making this proposal. Everybody here, from a law enforcement perspective, applauds it because it makes a lot of sense and gives us another tool that we need to do our jobs. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. And just so that you all know who we have here today, if you don't recognize them, Carolyn Murray is the prosecutor in Essex County, Camelia Valdez, the prosecutor in Passaic County, Ed DeFazio, the prosecutor in Hudson County. We have Pete Warshaw, the prosecutor in Monmouth County, with Ted Romanko, the prosecutor in Union County, and Joe Bikini, the prosecutor here in Mercer County. And as I said, all these folks are folks that I've worked with over time, both in my last job and in this one, and who face these type of challenges regardless of whether you're in an urban county, suburban county. Everyone faces these type of problems and concerns, or those who have both elements of urban and suburban in their particular jurisdiction. Lastly, let me make really clear that the amendment we're proposing would not require that people be detained pre-trial. All it would do is give the judges the option now to use that as a consideration, to use dangerousness to the community and other factors that we may include in legislation that would come after a constitutional amendment to determine whether or not to grant bail or not. That still would be within the purview of the judge. But right now, the fact is that it's not within the purview of the judge to make that decision. We have a constitution which says bail shall be issued. And, that's not something that we should continue with in the state. Hasn't worked at the federal level. I think it's just that one of the prosecutors said to me before, can't believe it took us this long to come to this conclusion. And so I'm looking forward to bipartisan support of this in the legislature, get this on the ballot this November, have people vote on it, and then we can work on enabling legislation after hopefully the successful passage of the amendment, so that we can get this to work for the people of the state beginning in January of 2013. Ready to take questions. Angie?
Governor, would this be restricted to a certain class of crimes or a certain number of suspects charges, or would that be the enabling legislation?
That would be the enabling legislation, Angie. What this would do by the constitutional amendment would permit that type of enabling legislation to be constitutional. And then we would work with the legislature on how we would apply it, what factors would be considered. One obviously that we care deeply about is the dangerousness to the community, which we're talking about today. But there may be other factors that need to be considered in all this, and we'd be ready after the amendment were passed to work with the legislature to come up with that legislation. In fact, our hope would be if the amendment is passed and put on the ballot by the legislature, we could then start working both later this spring and into the fall before its passage informally with the legislature on what we could all agree upon, so that once the amendment were passed, if that were to be the result, we could then immediately move to get this to committee and to the floor so that we could get something in effect for January of next year.
So if I may follow up then, would residents be voting before they had the bones of this, or would you expect that would all be worked out before ballot time?
I'd hope it would be worked out, but it wouldn't be part of the question, because the question only contains that issue which would amend the Constitution. But I can assure you there'll be a lot of conversation about this over the course of time. I'll certainly be talking about it a lot. I know the Attorney General will be. And so I think the public will be fairly well informed about what we're talking about. Yeah, Jenna. Well, that's part of the reason, why I've put the two proposals together, both the bail reform proposal and the proposal on diversion of nonviolent drug offenders. As you know, almost a quarter of our current state prison population is nonviolent drug offenders. There's a significant number of those who are also in detention and county jails as well. And so I think if we're successful in putting that program forward, that will clear a lot of space out for violent offenders to be held appropriately by both state and federal, or state and county authorities. So I don't have a number on how many this will affect. It's a moving target, Jenna. But I do know that I'm not concerned about a jail overcrowding situation if we also do what we need to do, and I think we should do, independent of this proposal, on the issue of treatment, in-house treatment of nonviolent drug offenders. Matt.
What is the time frame for that, for in-house treatment of nonviolent drug offenders, and what's your plan?
We're working hard, Matt. I know you're anxious, but we'll get to you as soon as we can on it. We got this going first. Mary Ann.
Governor, where do you see the biggest impact of this having on gangs, drug gangs? Where do you see the biggest impact?
The biggest impact, I think, is going to be on violent offenders and repeat violent offenders. Because what you can take into account in the federal system now is if someone comes in and is arrested for an offense and they seek bail, federal prosecutors, assistant U.S. attorneys can go in and lay out the history of violent conduct and say that a person is a danger to the community if they're released, danger to witnesses if they're released. I think it's those people with a long history of violent crimes that will be most affected by this proposed amendment.
Governor, the bail reform makes sense, but in the meantime, right here in the city of Trenton, you have 100 less police officers policing the street. You got a rise in crime, a big gang presence, a lot of guns on the streets. And so I wanted to know, what will you do right now to address that crime problem here in the capital city?
We've already done some things. I think the Attorney General can speak to that specifically. He's been in conversations with the mayor, and I think he took some action last week, but I'll let him talk about it.
Thank you, Governor. Yeah, without giving you too many details of it, the state police and I have been meeting about allocating resources that we can allocate from the state police perspective to supplement, and working with Prosecutor Bikini and his staff and the mayor and his public safety director to use those resources to supplement.